Welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast, where I talk with the world's leading thinkers, planners, and doers who are helping to build great companies in their own way. We learn how the work they're doing is creating an impact and get to know a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. Also, you can check out our books, Made to Thrive, outlining how to be a great CEO, as well as Onboarded, which is about making your new hires more effective faster. Leigh Branham is a thinker and a doer in the field of employee engagement and retention. As a doer, Leigh is the founder of Keeping the People, a management consulting firm which helps organisations analyse root causes of turnover in employee disengagement, then develop and implement employer of choice strategies. As a thinker, Leigh is an accomplished author, having authored or co-authored 4 books. His books, The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave, Re-engage, Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business, and Don't Take That Job Till You Read This Book, offer invaluable insights into the root causes of employee turnover and practical strategies for creating a workplace where employees want to stay. The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave is based on over 20,000 exit surveys, highlighting the difference between what managers said and what employees said when exiting. Then in his book, Re-engage, he revealed the 6 universal drivers of employee engagement based on his analysis of 2.1 million employee surveys collected in the best place to work competitions in 45 US cities. His work has been instrumental in transforming organisational cultures and improving employee satisfaction across many industries. You can find Leigh at keepingthepeople.com. Leigh, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
That's great. Leigh, it seems as though you're very good at marrying the hard data from employee engagement and attrition with the soft side of people development and culture, which is something that very few people have been able to do. Please tell us about your journey through this research, books, and consulting to where you are today.
Well, that is exactly what happened. It was a journey, and it was a journey based on my own dissatisfaction with my first career, which was in advertising, and I knew I wasn't happy doing that, and I wanted to do something different. So I started researching books on career change. Was heavily influenced by Richard Bowles, who wrote the book What Color Is Your Parachute, and became a career counselor, first in colleges and then as a job search coach for executives who had been terminated in Southern California. So I had a very up close and personal experience with hundreds of people who were looking to go through a career change. And so I had a lot of direct empirical evidence just from my own observations. And I knew that money was not the primary reason employees leave for most people, but I didn't have any way of proving it until I came across this data that was being kept by this consulting firm, the Saratoga Institute, up in Northern California. I contacted them. I found out they had been doing post-exit surveys of people who had left several of their client companies, representing 17 different industries. So I said, would you let me analyze that data? And they agreed to do it if I would put their name on the front cover of the book I was writing about whatever evidence I turned up. And so I agreed to do that. The company is now a part of PricewaterhouseCoopers. I published that book in 2005, and it's amazing that the 7 hidden reasons employees leave are still the same reasons they leave today, because they represent the needs that employees have. Because what I did when I looked at the data was I basically was reading 6,000 verbatim comments, and my eyes were getting a little googly eyed doing that. But I read every one of them, and as I was reading them, I grouped them into themes. About why somebody had left because they didn't get recognition, somebody else
Yeah.
left because of the career path wasn't there. But I ended up with 7 themes, and that they happened to coincide with the data, the hard data. So I had
Yeah.
hard data and soft data, and I had my own career counseling background.
Fantastic. As mentioned earlier, what I love about your work is that it's driven by data, and so much on the soft side or the people side of the business isn't driven by data perhaps. So I want to dig into the 7 hidden reasons in just a moment. But before I do, I want to pick up on a quote that you've said, which kind of draws on that journey. One thing I've learned is that good management, a positive culture, and caring leaders are far more important than pay and benefits. So before we get into the 7 reasons, there are always skeptics to this because we always use your work in our strategic planning sessions and say, what was the real reason that person left? Because we don't think it was pay to buffer people's reaction because there's always skeptics.
Yeah.
So as a person who is motivated by data, what would you say to the skeptic of that comment?
Well, I would first acknowledge that some people do leave because of pay.
Yeah.
Some of them just, it's a survival issue and they're not making enough money to pay their bills. Other people leave because of ego, and they feel they need to be making what their friends or relatives are making, and money becomes very important. Salespeople are particularly driven by pay, but what we see when we really look at the dynamics of how people make decisions, um, and they go through the exit interview process, and the question comes, why are you leaving? And the answer is usually, and this is what goes down in the records of why the employee left, oh, I got higher pay. I got a better job. I got more
Yeah.
pay. Well, most people who leave an organization do make more money. They get a pay increase. So that's true, but it's not the whole truth.
Yes.
What it's really a two-step process. There's the reason you start looking, and then there's the reason you finally leave. And so
Mm-hmm.
what most companies are hearing when they do the simplistic exit question is they're hearing uh, something that's really a half of an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding the back end half of that answer is the key to re-engagement, and that's what matters because attrition is so
Yeah,
terribly expensive. So if
right.
you can, please walk us through what are the 7 hidden reasons employees leave. um, uh, Walk us through those, and then maybe is there one area that you think that listeners should start to act on first?
Well, yes, I'm going to give them to you in the order that I give them in the book, which is sort of a chronological order. The first one is the job or workplace is not what you expected. Okay, so that could be any reason. It could be you don't have a desk with a window, or you don't get the hours off or that you expected, and you didn't know this until you started working there.
Yeah.
We find that people in working in bank tellers who have to deal with an angry customer uh, realize they can't tolerate the nasty things that the angry customers say. So, any customer service position, you have to give people a preview of what the job entails
Yeah.
before you hire them. And
Yeah.
that could be any of the rest of the reasons. I'm going to go through the rest of them, but that shock that they experience uh,
Mm.
is very often the push factor that pushes them
Yeah.
out the door.
Yeah.
Uh, the second reason is that they don't get the feedback or coaching that they should be getting. And I put that number 2 because that should happen very quickly. It should be discussed in the job interview itself. And of course, as you know, onboarding is very important. Um, the employee should understand how much coaching and feedback they're going to get. And one of the biggest complaints is I haven't had a performance appraisal, nor do I ever seem to have a performance discussion with my manager,
Yeah.
because something like 65% of employees don't get enough feedback or don't know what's expected of them.
Yeah.
So that's the second reason employees begin to look for a job. The third reason is lack of career advancement opportunity, not seeing a path, not actually doing the job you thought you should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, which gets into another reason, which is the mismatch between the person and the job. This is often the fault of insufficient interviewing, a failure to understand how to probe and really get examples in the interview of instances where they have actually used the skill you're going to be asking them to use.
Yeah.
Behavior-based interviewing. Um, the fifth reason is employees feel devalued and unrecognized.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick out one reason to begin with, to attack, it's this one, because there's so many ways we convey to employees that they're not important, that they're not valued. Pay happens to be one of those reasons. But so you have, competitive pay and equitable pay within the organization is a ticket to admission to becoming a great employer. So the
Yeah.
best employers do pay well, but they do a whole lot more than that. They recognize, they get out among the manager, understands what turns on one employee more than another. Some people like individual recognition. Some people would prefer group recognition.
Yeah.
Uh, Little things like if you're talking to your employee and you're looking at the computer the whole time back and forth, that sends a micro message to that employee that they're not important.
Yeah.
So it's big things and little things that show whether or not employees are valued. Um, Reason number 6 is lack of work-life balance and a feeling that the company doesn't care about me, about my well-being. So
Yeah.
this encompasses benefits. It encompasses, not the main thing is not overloading people with so much work they don't have a life outside work. Uh, you know, Talking to the group about who among the group is having issues at home that might be keeping them uh, from being fully engaged, showing empathy. Some of the companies that score highest on this particular issue did a great job of that during the pandemic,
Mm.
realizing that what people were going through and accommodating them with hours off and just paying special attention to them. How are you doing? Conversations.
Yeah.
And the final reason, not the least important, in fact, it's the most important in terms of what managers and senior executives, it's the feeling that the senior leaders of the organizations don't care about me as a person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like Pony Express management. You ride that horse till it drops, and then you get another horse. Uh, that whole issue, and you have to be a competent leader as well. Employees know Employees can recognize an incompetent senior leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
they recognize a team of senior leaders that don't work as a team. They
Yeah.
recognize that too,
Yeah.
and it filters down through the organization. So, senior leaders control the culture, and they also send messages to managers and middle managers about the way to treat employees. So, culture, if I had to come down to one word, culture is king. and culture eats strategy for breakfast, as you've probably heard.
From the great Peter Drucker. So you approach the Saratoga Institute, who have 21,700 exit interviews, as I understand it, and you ask them if you can utilize their data for this book. You go through all of the responses. You arrange them into these 7 different areas, which the book's starting to come together. One of the most powerful images, I think, in the world of culture is the first figure, and I've got the book here, and it's figure 1. It's a comparison pair of pie charts, where it says that 89% of managers said that their departing employee was leaving for more money, whereas only 12% of those same departing employees said they were leaving for more money. I mean, it's just it's a staggering difference. Considering the 7 reasons you've just mentioned, why do you think there is such a difference?
I think it goes back to the exit interview that's not done properly, where people, HR traditionally has reported, why people are leaving as they just checking a box.
Yeah.
More money, more pay is the reason given, but they haven't isolated the real reason, the thing that made that employee start thinking about leaving in the first place, which is the push factor. You have a push factor and you have the pull factor. And the pull factor is almost always money.
Yeah.
So we're taking that as the real reason.
Yeah. And it's such an easy excuse for managers. I mean, we typically work with mid-sized businesses, let's say 5 million to 300 million. It's so easy for managers in those sorts of organizations who don't have perhaps a comprehensive HR function, conducting comprehensive HR exit interviews. It's so easy for them to just say, oh, they're leaving for more money. But really, there are these push and pull factors, like you said. So these are things that happen over time, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people can quit on the first day they're there, though, of course. But, there's another factor, and that is that most managers don't want to hear that the reason the employee is leaving was them. Because then the finger points right back to them. And they don't want to hear that. And if they don't want to hear it, they're going to accept the reason being pay. Yeah. Because most people get a pay raise when they move on to the next job. So that's how the belief system was happened over time.
And so that may be your answer to my next question. You note in the book that many managers don't care about why their employees are leaving. Why do you believe that many managers don't care about why their employees are leaving? Why is this? And what can you tell us about the real cost of avoidable turnover?
Yeah, I needed to mention that there's a mindset is a very important aspect. And I worked with a company where engineers in Southern California were constantly leaving. And I would ask senior leaders about it, and they would say, well, there's really nothing you can do about that. I mean, it's just that's going to happen. Turnover is the cost of doing business. Yeah. Well, a certain amount of it is. I mean, you cannot stop when there are other aerospace companies pirating away your engineers. You're going to lose a certain amount. But that belief system can make you blind to what it is you can do if you believe it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And so we got them to realize, the people were coming in and they were saying, I'm submitting my resignation, and the manager would go, wait, whoa, what's happening? I had plans for you. I was getting ready to give you a big assignment. Well, why weren't they talking about that?
Yeah.
So the problem was managers and employees were not talking. Part of it is they're engineers and they don't communicate enough anyway. But the other part of it is they didn't know how to open the discussion, which is why I created an employee engagement and retention discussion guide, which has the types of questions to ask and have it be a meeting that happens within the first 6 months of their employment and happens again on a regular basis. Basically saying, I value your talents. I'm really glad you're here. I want to make sure you stay happy and engaged here. And I'd like to give you a list of questions and meet again with you in 2 weeks and get your answer about how you're finding things going here in the new job, and go from there. And I'd like to make sure you stay engaged. So,
And where can listeners find that guide, the employee engagement guide?
well, I'd be happy to send it to anyone who asks. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so contact you through your website. I'll leave it at that, and if anyone is interested, you can grab that.
Yep.
I just didn't want to leave that hanging. That's all. So the second part of that question, I do want to just go back to that. So can you tell us about the real cost of avoidable turnover?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the kinds of costs that most companies track are the cost of replacement. The running the ad, the advertising costs, the job postings, and so forth. What they fail to take into consideration is the cost of having that position unfilled for a certain length of time. And the rule of thumb is, and this is all what we call lost productivity costs.
Yeah.
And the rule of thumb is 80% of the departed employee's salary is the cost of turnover in the first month of the vacancy. In the second month of the vacancy, the rule of thumb is 60% of the cost of the person's salary, and then it goes on down for the first 5 months of the new person. But that's actually see, people don't get up to speed in the new job.
Not at all. Yeah.
So you're being generous to say that the person is 20% effective in the first month and 40% effective in the second month, and so on down. Yeah. But most companies don't track that, and it's very real, especially when the person who left had a great relationship with one of your best customers, and somebody's trying to retain that customer while that person's gone.
It's such a hidden cost. I obviously have done a bit of research around that myself, and it's such a hidden cost that makes the seemingly small amount of effort around engagement and onboarding correctly such an amazing return on investment. It's remarkable. But if people don't want to do it, if they're too busy or they think they're too busy and it's not worth it, it's very, very hard to bridge that gap. But certainly the numbers stack up pretty quickly. Both of your books, The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave and Re-Engage, both focus on understanding why employees leave and what keeps them engaged. Can you explain how the reasons for leaving and the drivers for engagement are similar?
Well, I wrote the survey for the Best Places to Work competition, the employee engagement survey that was used in those competitions. And it was informed by what I had learned from the 7 hidden reasons employees leave. So it covers the same themes, which basically represent what do I as a person in the workplace, what do I need psychologically?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was basically, it was not going to be far off from those, but we didn't find much that was new except when we when we used the survey that went out to people whose companies said we want to be in this competition because if we win the competition, we get publicity as being a great place to work. So they give it to their employees. Some people think these competitions are stacked and fixed, but believe me, they're not, because we've seen some pretty horrible feedback coming back. But the six themes we saw for building a great place to work were the same things we saw in the seven hidden reasons, except that with one difference, and that is the issue of teamwork. And which really, if I had to compare it to any of the seven reasons employees leave, it would fit under well-being. Because if you've got if you've got poor teamwork, it affects the sense of well-being.
Yeah, yeah,
You have rumors, you have innuendos, you have lack of trust in a team, and that kills engagement pretty quickly.
yeah.
So we versus me, and that usually starts with a senior leader who is very we oriented.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a saying that the fish rots from the head down, right? So
There you go.
the leader sets the culture. I want to pick up on something that was inside the Seven Hidden Reasons book. It's this thing you called the decision to leave web survey. Okay. So in that, you found that people are 5 times more likely to leave because of an internal issue than in response to an outside opportunity. So it's really 5 times more likely the things that are happening inside the company that's making people leave. What should listeners take from that statistic, do you think?
Well, I asked the question of 1,000 people in that survey. Was it something that happened? Was there a triggering event that happened that made
Yeah.
you start thinking about leaving? And the answer to that was 67% said yes. And that there's a professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, Dr. Thomas Lee, who has studied how people make the decision to leave an organization. And his research found the exact same number.
Wow.
About 2/3
Yeah.
of the decisions to leave. It's like a staircase going downward. You have a triggering or shocking event. It's when you discover, for example, a woman I worked with was not paid the same way as her male peers were. And
Oh.
we remember the day she found this out. We could hear her door slam from down the hall. Okay,
Yeah.
and that was a triggering event in her leaving. And it
Yeah.
could be any number of things that a manager or a senior leader does or says that they're not even aware of, that
Yeah.
that begin to get people going down this staircase of feeling a little disengaged and then giving less effort every day, coming in a little later than normal, not speaking up in meetings. There's subtle signs, and sometimes not so subtle, like they come dressed up for a job interview during the noon hour. Um, but there are subtle signs. You can tell when somebody who was engaged becomes a little less engaged. But you have to pay attention. A lot of managers are so busy and with their own checklist of to-dos that they don't notice what's going on with their people.
So there's a triggering event. You metaphorically said it's like a person going down a staircase. So can leaders turn that around?
That's one of my main messages. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
That's how we got to the title of our book, Re-engage.
Yeah.
You
Great.
can
Great.
re-engage people who are unengaged because what you need to do is sit down with them and say, I've noticed something different lately. Um, you don't seem to be as enthusiastic about the job as you used to be. You don't speak up in meetings the way you used to. Is there something going on? I mean, is there anything I can do? Or is there anything I'm not doing or am doing
Yeah.
that I need to know about?
And that it just shows that you care, if nothing else, that you're interested. I guess it depends on how far down that staircase you are. But let's now move on to this book, Re-engage. Um, 2.1 million data points in your research here, so fairly extensive. And you came up with these 6 universal drivers of employee engagement. Can you walk us through the 6 drivers, please?
Sure. The 6 drivers begin with senior leaders being the most important one. Um, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can make sure I present them as written. Trust and confidence in senior leaders. Um, Trust is really key there. Confidence in their competence as a senior leader, but do they say one thing and do another? Do they back up their words with action? I think we've all known senior leaders who fall short of that expectation, but they also hold their management team accountable. They create the culture. So this one's number one because we feel it's the most necessary ingredient to becoming a better place to work. You know, I talk about some of the great senior leaders. Jim Sinegal at Costco created that culture. The great Southwest Airlines executive.
Mm.
Senior leaders can control that, but they need a management team who are serious about being a good manager. And there are a lot
Yeah.
of managers who, once they're promoted into being a manager, it's like, hey, I've made it to the management level. Um, I don't have to listen to my people anymore. I can tell them what to do. They feel like they have a license to be the boss and micromanage, and they've just never been trained about the right way to manage. There are a
Yeah.
lot of my way or the highway people, managing, and we feel like management training is the key to this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Wow.
holding your managers accountable for having performance discussions on a regular basis.
Mm.
The third thing was culture of teamwork. Effective managers who make sure everybody on the team knows what their role is, um, and they hold each other accountable. Like Whole Foods is an example of having the team hire the person. In other words, nobody gets hired at Whole Foods unless the team of peers approves that person.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's ownership of the teamwork. So there's a real sense of we, and there's some cultures that say if I hear rumors and behind the back talking about
Yeah.
anyone, if I hear you've done that, you're going to get one chance, and then you're
Yeah.
out of here. So being real strict about maintaining a sense of camaraderie and commitment to each other is key. The fourth one we found was support for learning and growth, um, not making it difficult for people to move from one job to another in an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Some companies it feels like glue has been poured into the career ladder, and you can't move easily from one job to another. Well, the best
Inside
way,
the firm.
yeah,
Yep.
within the firm. Yeah, you don't want the
Yeah.
people to leave. You want to have a shot at putting them into a different role that uses their talents
Yeah.
more than someone else's. So having some fluidity about the career path is key there. The fifth thing that we found as a driver of employee engagement is um, uh, acknowledging employees' contributions. Giving them
Yeah.
pats on the back. Uh, when you watch somebody do something and do it well, the phrase that I like is, I saw what you did there. Did you see what you did there? You have a
That's
talent.
beautiful.
You have a
Yeah,
talent.
that's beautiful.
And the problem is a lot of managers aren't looking. They aren't seeing their employees' talents and praising them because they're too busy with their own checklist.
Yeah.
Or the employee is in a remote location. But you need a way of at least listening to an employee describe what they're proudest of during the past week. What did you do that you're proud of? Tell me about it. And collecting stories, if you can't observe them directly, at least have other ways of knowing what they're doing.
That pride, it matters so much. It's again a word or a philosophy principle that's woven through our work. Are employees proud of their workplace, of their employer, of their product, of their team? It's such an important part of the work that we do.
Yep. There's one company that I've worked with that when the senior leaders meet, every senior leader tells a story about someone in their department that did something praiseworthy.
Yeah.
And they're required to come into that meeting with a story
Yep.
of somebody. So
Beautiful.
that's definitely a best practice. Um, the other final reason or driver, it's not, these are drivers, these are what promote a sense of engagement, is just personal well-being, good work-life balance, not
Yeah.
being too busy that you can't take care of your own health.
Yeah. I love it. I love it that there's such a wide data set, and you can distill it down to these six buckets. So, how do you define, with all of the work that you've done, how do you define employee engagement?
Well, employee engagement, it's interesting. HR, until about the year 2010, was doing satisfaction surveys. And satisfaction surveys are often measured, am I happy with my benefits? Am I happy with my level of pay? And you can get a much higher percentage if that's all you're asking.
Yeah.
But do you feel really enthusiastic about your job? That's what engagement is.
Yeah.
Engagement is feeling like you have been given uh, so much from your job and from your employer that you can't wait to give back.
Yeah.
You want to give back, and it's like you feel lucky to work in this organization, or you feel really lucky to work for this manager. I mean, we have people that have turned down pay increases of 25% because they know that they wouldn't have as good and as caring a manager as the one they're working for.
Wow.
And
That's
that's really
beautiful.
what you're looking for. A manager and a culture that makes you want to go the extra mile. That's the difference between engagement and satisfaction.
That's a beautiful definition. Thank you. Um, so I want to just spin back quickly to teamwork. Um, you spoke about the Whole Foods example. What are some other ways, perhaps, that, in your experience, companies can create a strong team culture?
Well, having pizza every Thursday is one company's example.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, uh, Having situations where you sit the employees down around a table and especially in a situation where they have to cover for each other or there's schedules and people have families and they have ball games to go to and so forth. I do consulting with dental offices, and you have to work as a team in a dental office, but camaraderie helps quite a bit. And
Hmm.
work-life balance is influenced by understanding when you need to to help out a coworker who has to be gone during a certain time, and
Yeah.
you fill in for them. So promoting caring about each other, sitting down at a table and saying, working out the schedules so everybody can help and pitch in when that's necessary. But
Beautiful. Okay.
go ahead.
Um, I do want to ask you about a re-engagement discussion. So, what's an effective re-engagement discussion? We touched on this earlier. Can you give us some examples of an effective re-engagement discussion and how managers might use this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, some companies call them stay interviews. Okay,
Uh-huh.
but there's a risk in calling them stay interviews, because if you start doing it with the most valued employees and the other people on the team that you may not consider the most valued find out and they haven't had a stay interview, they can assume, well, I guess they don't want me to stay. You know, that's why we call them re-engagement discussions.
Yeah, okay.
But you don't have to call them anything. All you
Yeah.
need to do is to tell the employee, I want to make sure that I'm doing what's necessary. You're getting your needs met in this organization, and I'm doing what's necessary to keep you and to keep you engaged. And so I'm going to give you a list of questions, and I have those questions right here they're part of the discussion guide.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, things like what's the most important thing to you in your job? If you were to think about leaving, what would cause you to think about that? Um, how are things going in your team? Is there anything that's causing you concern? Do you have
Mm.
any ideas that you think would make us a better team? You know, first of all, they feel flattered that you care enough to ask them these questions. You
Yeah.
know, they must think I'm pretty important, or they wouldn't be taking the time. So you're conveying that you value the employee and their opinion by having this discussion in the first place. But you have them go away and with this list of questions, think about it for a week or two, and then you have a meeting scheduled, and you have that
Mm-hmm.
meeting, and you show you really care. Now there's a lot of old school managers who have come back at me with, well, they should be asking me what I need instead of me asking them what they need.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's a mindset issue, and you know that's where the CEO can have a lot of influence in
Yeah.
saying no. We've got to meet their needs. We're in a competitive situation here. There's a war for talent. There always is a war for talent, and we need to do what's necessary, especially with our key people, to make sure they stay happy here.
Yeah. And the cost of attrition is enormous. You know, to have I'll say a healthy attrition rate or a healthy retention rate, you know, you can draw a really straight line to the cost of that. So I'd like to change gears now. The book that I'm working on currently is entitled Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better, and it's about building a better business. So, in your experience, how would you describe a better business?
A better business. Hmm. Well, I think a better business is a business that is clear about its vision, knows there's a market for what it does, and has thoroughly researched that there is a market. Um, you know, I was on the advisory board of a company in Silicon Valley that thought they had a product, and nobody was buying it. Nobody was investing. Nobody was getting them that first stage investment. But they did their due diligence, and they learned a lot. Now they're looking at other possible products.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot happening right now in the measurement of HR. Uh, how do you measure and equate employee behavior to customer outcomes? There's a lot of AI stuff going on
Yeah.
around that. But yeah, do your research. Um, Hiring is extremely important. Getting the team, the initial team members on board and in the right seats on the bus.
Mm.
Okay, that means you do some pretty careful personality assessments, intelligent interviewing, um, and you got to have funding. You got to
Yeah.
get the funding for the business. A lot of businesses, run out before they reach the end of the runway. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so, what is a book that you would recommend for our audience?
Well, there's so many. When you ask me to be prepared with one, I think we've talked a lot about teamwork, and I think Patrick Lencioni's "The Five Dysfunctions of a Team" should be
Yeah.
necessary reading. I've taught teamwork um, to senior executives, and I've used the assessment in the back of that book so that
Yeah.
they all understand each other's style
Mm-hmm.
in a team. Uh,
Yeah. It's
and
such a great book. I
yeah,
wholeheartedly endorse it as well. Pat Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and I can't get to the end of today without saying at the back of your book there is a fantastic guide on how to manage people. So again, the 7 hidden reasons employees leave. How can people learn more about you and your business?
well, they can go to my website, which is keepingthepeople.com. That website was based on the title of my first book, which was Keeping the People Who Keep You in Business. Um, or they can contact me directly at my initials, LB at keepingthepeople.com, if they want to
Lovely.
communicate with me directly.
Lovely. Thank you. Now, Leigh, what haven't we discussed that you wanted to cover off today?
Well, I was going to say this issue of the triggering event.
Hmm.
There's a lot of research about the way the human brain works by Dr. David Rock, R-O-C-K. And I would strongly recommend looking up his books because he talks about the limbic alligator brain and how important emotions are. And these triggering events were usually things that were very personal insults or a sense of shame or a sense of gut level embarrassment that are happening in the workplace that are the triggering event for people going down the staircase of becoming disengaged. Uh,
Okay.
so that's a book. I think understanding how the brain works and how many of these decisions are not rational decisions; they're
Yeah.
emotional decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
if
what
something
triggers those, what
if
causes those events to occur? Yeah.
yeah, that's another question you can ask in a re-engagement discussion. Has anything happened lately that has caused
Uh-huh.
you to question your decision to come to work here?
Yeah. Hard question to answer, but if they're not too far down the staircase, to use your metaphor, you can pick it up. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. How to read the subtle signs and act before it's too late. That's the subtitle of the seven
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Leigh, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your wisdom. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, it's such an important topic, and the work and the research that you've done is just so valuable, and yeah, can not only save so much money, but also save so much misery that's unnecessary in the workplace. So thank you for your work, and thank you for your time with us today.
Well, thank you for your interest. I did want to mention the most recent book, which is really for job seekers.
Please do.
Don't take that job till you read this book. It goes into the 7 reasons as possible reasons you may leave your next employer. So it's a warning to what as to what to look for in your next job.
Awesome. Well, Leigh, thank you again. It's been great having you today.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.